53 River Street Master Plan Committee. I'm going to ask the members of the committee to introduce themselves in a minute. This is our third meeting. It took us a while to put the committee together since the town first purchased the property. You're all familiar with it, a beautiful stretch of wetlands along Fort Brook Pond, and then the uplands past the dam that the Lazaro company used to own. Used to be an old mill there, a lot of historic elements on the property, about 2.5 acres of open space. And we want to try to get as much community input as we can about ideas for redeveloping the property and providing it as a space for the residents of Acton. So we have retained Amanda Pebler and Eliza Kress, who are here tonight. They are master's degree students at the Conway School for Landscape Design out in East Hampton, Mass, out by Amherst. And they've taken on a preliminary concept plan to help us put together your ideas and the committee's ideas for what we might be able to use this property for going forward into the future. So tonight we're going to start with first introducing the members of our committee. We'll have a presentation by Eliza and Amanda. We're going to answer questions that people have about the current site conditions. We'll have a large group discussion followed by small group activity to get people's ideas in the small groups, and then we'll come together again and discuss our ideas before we wrap up. So once again, thank you for coming. Please stay involved. I expect this process will go on for quite a while before we come up with a final design. Any final design will require some funding, whether it's Community Preservation Committee funding or whatever. We have to go back to town meeting to get a vote to move forward with this plan. So it's a community effort, and thank you again for coming. So let me ask the rest of the members of the committee just to introduce themselves. I'm going to use the mic because we're being recorded tonight and it won't get picked up if we're not on the mic.
Thanks. Hi, Pete Hucknell from School Street.
Don Boyle, Audubon Drive.
Camille Duquette, Vanderbilt Road.
Bill Clara, Piper Road.
I'm Robert Whittlesey. I'm one of the commissioners of the Housing Authority in town.
New York, Brookside Circle.
I'm Bill Aylesbury, High Street.
Okay, so we're going to turn it over to Amanda and Eliza to lead us in this discussion.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? This is a little bit odd. Well, thank you for having us. We're really, really excited to be part of this process. This is our third project of the year with the Conway School. The Conway School, as you can see here, is a program of sustainable landscape design and planning. And our degree is founded in ecological design, site-based analysis, and basically using the landscape to influence our designs for specific areas. I personally grew up in the Pioneer Valley in western Massachusetts, moved back to the program here from Colorado, where I was working for the Chamber of Commerce in Crested Butte.
My name is Amanda. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, first time in New England, and I studied environmental science in undergrad, working in communications for environmental nonprofits in the area, and also education, and more recently has moved out back here and working with the Conway School.
Yeah, so just kind of giving you a brief overview of where we are with this process and where we'll kind of leave off, and you guys will have the opportunity to pick up. We were introduced to this project, I guess it was at the beginning of April, and we will graduate at the end of June. So we get to basically come in, do a really intense kind of overview of what's going on here, and hopefully leave you all with a really kind of conceptual idea of what exactly your community wants to see from this property, taking into account all the kind of analysis that we do. And we're going to share with you a little bit of the analysis that we've done. We have formal presentations at the end of May where we'll be presenting a bunch of different kind of design ideas, and Peter is going to be coming and watching that and giving us kind of feedback based on what you guys are all here to give us information on this evening. And then we're hoping that we will be able to come back and be in front of you again on May 30th and kind of walk through some of those different designs that we've come up with. And again, get your feedback on the positive and negative things that you see in each of those in order for us to kind of put together that kind of final idea and vision of what this place can be. Did I forget any major stuff there?
No,
I think that's kind of where we're at, and as Peter mentioned, we're going to kind of do a bunch of hands-on things this evening to make sure that we get all of your feedback, and at the end of the evening, if there's something that you didn't feel that you were able to kind of make heard, we encourage you to come and chat with us afterwards. We're really excited about having you all here. Thanks so much for your time, and with that, we'll kind of jump right into the site here.
Okay. So I just want to kind of refer back to our preliminary goals that we've discussed with the town and kind of get you guys caught up with where we're at. The town has addressed restoration, redevelopment, and recreation as possible elements of this project. More specifically, restoring the historical value, as we know the mill used to be on this site, as well as restoring the ecological integrity of the site. In terms of redevelopment, it has been put out there that maybe it could be a possible site for affordable senior housing, as well having more public parking in that area. It has also been offered maybe that it could be a public park with some ADA accessible pathways throughout. So these are just kind of the preliminary ideas. We want to further look at these tonight and also get new ideas from all of you. So I just want to start with that.
Okay. So we'll start with kind of a brief timeline. I apologize if the colors aren't coming through super clearly on this, but 1845 was when the mill was built and the dam was erected on Fort Pond Brook. By 1850, 900, the South Acton kind of area there was a really exciting hub of exchange. By 1930, the mill was closed. In 1951, it burned down. The Sid Marr Company had some type of ownership, not exactly clear how that all went down, over the property and built this kind of warehouse that still exists on the site. And by 1970, the Lazaro family, the company, or the family that was previously owned the site, began using it. By 82, they had officially purchased it, and by 84, unfortunately, there was an oil spill on the property. They were using it to kind of house materials for paving. By 1995, the South Acton Historic District was put into place, and 2009, that oil spill was officially abated. In 2017, that's when you guys, the town of Acton, purchased this property, and we're excited to be part of kind of the next chapter of what this place looks like.
To give you a little context of where this property is in Acton, I'm sure all of you are very familiar. So 53 River Street is located in South Acton, more specifically the South Acton Historic District. If you notice the image on the right, you see 51 River Street. It's just 0.4 miles away from the T station, right on River Street there, just after where it forks from School Street. In the kind of larger context, the site kind of sits below Green Hill Recreation Area and Plattsbrook Conservation Area. And as many of you have pointed out to us, River Street is a very narrow road. It's two-way currently, but there is a lot of traffic, as we've heard, on that road, and a lot of high-speed traffic as well. And no sidewalks along the part of the property, along River Street where the property runs currently. And this is the site itself, 53 River Street. It is a little over 7 acres. And this is what exists on site. I just kind of want to orient you to the site, since many of you may not have seen it. There is a gate up right now. So this is 53 River Street. Just to orient you, this is north. And right below, on the southern edge of the site, runs the commuter rail line. About 2 acres of the site, a little over, is this paved area up here where the paving operation was going on, and about 5 acres of it is wetland, with the Fort Pond Brook running down the center of it from west to east. The brook is dammed right here, and the town is interested in potentially removing the dam which would need further analysis to see kind of what the ramifications of that are and what the benefits are as well. Kind of in the center of the brook here are these old mill footings, which the town was interested in maybe preserving as kind of a historical element of on site and kind of restoring some of that history to the property itself. We're going to move forward with this, but we'll have this image up for you as we tour the site.
I keep forgetting that this is attached to me. So as you approach 53 River Street, view A is kind of where looking into the site in the early spring after heavy rain activity. It pretty much takes up the water pretty much fills up this entire western portion of the property. And view B is just looking into the site and into this basically disturbed area right here, just to, as you guys can see here.
This is looking at the paved area that exists on site currently. As you can see, there's these large concrete blocks to the eastern corner here, as well as this building that we had mentioned and a shed. Currently, we're under the impression that the town would probably like to clear this before any new development occurs.
This is looking west, upstream above the brook, as you can see in view A. That is, the dam is not operable at the moment, so it remains open, but there's no mechanism to open or close it. So this is basically a view of the water finding its way over the top because the water levels are so high. B, the image there, is the footings that Amanda mentioned that the mill used to sit on top of. Really, really beautiful. Very gorgeous architectural remains of the mill there. And then C is the raceway, so that little arm in the north of the actual brook itself.
And finally, just looking up towards the majority of the property, which is all a delineated wetland, we're looking at 2 different times a year. This is really more in the summer months where the brook has kind of receded, and notice how different this looks. This is where the water is completely reaching the edges of the property, and this was actually, this photo was taken about a month ago. So there's really a variable water table on this site.
So in our first committee meeting, we had the good fortune of having a couple public members and then also members of the committee share with us some of the wildlife that they've seen on the property and surrounding areas over the last couple of years. We just thought that this was a really wonderful thing to show you guys. This place is a really wonderful place. It's got a lot of assets, and these are some of the neighbors that are around. Amanda mentioned that the western part of the property above the dam is a delineated wetland. These are some of the wetland species that we presume to be there. We went back to the site today and spent a couple hours there, and in fact, those are some of the ones that are there. In addition, there are a lot of invasives there because the site is in part disturbed, and these are some of the invasive plants that we saw there, and that ultimately we hope to come up with some type of solution to restore the natural beauty of the site. Because the western side of the property is a delineated wetland, the Wetlands Protection Act does come into play here, as well as the riverfront setbacks. So as you can see here, the entirety of the site is within kind of the wetland buffer, as well as the 200-foot riverfront area. Because the eastern part of the site is previously disturbed, it does not technically is not technically delineated as a wetland. However, in any restoration that potentially could be done here, it might be deemed that way down the road. Along with the wetland, this is basically the FEMA floodplain data. As you can see here, again, west of the dam upstream is all within the 100-year floodplain, as with a significant part of the eastern portion of the property downstream. A hydrologist, somebody with a little bit more hydraulic background would have to come in and basically do a really intense assessment of this site to get a better idea of how this would shift if the dam were removed. But things obviously are very different than they would be if a lot of that water that you guys are seeing in the previous slides was no longer being held back. So kind of as a conclusion of the stuff that we've shared with you, the assets of the site, it has tremendous historical value. It's in the historic district. Wildlife habitat and the wetland delineation is a wonderful thing. You guys saw all the wonderful species that have been seen in that area, as well as the fact that it's owned by the town and the fact that the public is going to have a say in how this place is used, as well as its location close to southern Acton, and as well as close to some of the bike paths that that are going in. Constraints on the site, flooding, when is it going to happen, where is it going to happen, how is removing a dam going to impact it, the fact that it's narrow, constrained by River Street to the north and the MTBA tracks to the south, as well as the steep pitches that are on either side of the site. And finally, accessibility, and really why we're here hoping to elicit some advice and input from you guys. Who's going to use this site? How are they going to use this site? And how are they going to get there? So with that being said, here is a view of the existing conditions that we showed you earlier, as well as a zone map that we put together, basically calling out the very distinct areas that we've been able to kind of pull out based on some of the analysis that we've done. And with that, we would love to get your opinion. We're going to ask you to get up out of your seats, I think. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions about the existing conditions on the site? Anything that we've presented to you, curiosities? Yeah.
What percentage would you say is the area that requires like chemical cleanup?
So the paved area, the disturbed area, the area below the dam to the east is about 2 out of the 7 acres. The site as a whole is, I think, 7.23 acres, and those 2 acres are currently paved and were being used by the paving company, and then upstream of that is just the wetland. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What is the motivation for removing the dam? And I'm sort of seeing this conflict of this is a historic dam, and we're talking about historic footings, so why would we destroy the dam if that's also historic?
Sure.
Where's the suggestion come from?
Our suggestion, we're just under the committee and the town has said to us that they have interest in removing the dam. I don't think that we have a personal feel one way or the other. However, can we deflect that to you guys?
We could ask Bettina Abe is Bettina here? You are here, right? To talk to that, because I think she has looked at that issue a little bit, or Tom, if you have input on that, certainly would like to hear it.
Yeah,
Can I ask you to come to the podium? So again, we're being recorded, so if we don't speak into a microphone, it won't get picked up.
The town has studied all the dams that are on town property, and we have a number of them throughout the town, and they're all rated from either successful and functional to completely destroyed. And this dam is in rough shape. It needs to either be completely repaired, which would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, or be removed. So it's a decision the committee is going to have to make, and or the public will have to make. But in its current condition, it needs to either be fixed or removed.
Okay, for those who might be watching this video later or don't know Tom Tidman, our conservation agent in town, head of the Natural Resources Department.
Any other questions before we get you guys involved?
So to clarify, question, I understand the desire to remove dams for wetlands and wildlife, but what about just letting it deteriorate there? It is a historic structure. I'm just wondering.
Can you repeat the questions also again for people that might be watching the video? I mean, you can do that yourself, Eliza, you don't need to.
So the question is to Claire's question about the dam. Since it is a historic structure, I am sensitive to the wildlife corridors, et cetera. I think they've adapted since the dam started falling apart. But I'm wondering why we don't just leave it there and let it deteriorate. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm under the personal understanding that there is a greater flood risk with having a dam that is deteriorating versus removing it at this point. There obviously is further analysis to be done, but that there is a concern about if the dam were to fail. Any other questions before we move on?
Let me just ask Bill or Greg, historians in the audience here, about, is the dam on the cultural resources list, the dam itself?
I do not, I know that the property is on the cultural resource list. We have not ever been allowed on the property as the Historical Commission to go in and assess any of it. The condition of the dam at this point is, many years ago, the town of Acton wanted to study wastewater going into the brook. At that point, they tried to open the dam. It was not really feasible. They just sawed the gate right in half because it was a wooden gate with a rack and pinion type lifting mechanism. The whole thing has been out for about 50 years. The way it works right now is that the thing fills up with water. There's a lot of debris in there that holds it back, and it probably acts right now as a metering device to keep flooding from going on further on downstream. If we take it out, I don't know. But the other thing is that a number of years ago that I believe it was the Corps of Engineers came to Acton and looked at all of the dams. I do not know what the report was on this dam, but it seems, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it's really in a state of collapse. You can say anything you want about it. It's like the barn down at Morrison Farm.
From a historic perspective, and I want to invite more questions, but this raises, being a lawyer, a dozen more questions every time something comes up. But from a historic perspective, do the historians consider dams to be objects that are worthy of historic protection?
Absolutely.
Okay, the only other thing I thought to say was, Tara asked a question about I thought it was hazardous waste, but the answer was that the 2.5 acres of uplands are paved with asphalt. The town did a hazardous waste study before we acquired the property. That oil spill has been cleaned up, and so there is no actual hazardous waste underground there.
Yes.
If they were to, in fact, remove the dam, if you were to look at dam removal, have they looked yet at how much habitat is connected upstream and downstream?
And Amanda, let me just again ask you to repeat the question so the people who might be watching this afterwards can understand what the question was before you answer.
Sure. So the question was, if the dam was removed, how much connection would there be between habitat up and downstream?
How much habitat would you open up?
Yeah, I think that at this point, based on what we've looked at, everything is habitat. It's just more about creating connectivity, and basically being able to open up a corridor for more than just birds to move up and down the waterway. We went today and checked out Pratt's Brook Conservation Area, which is beautiful, and that's that would be connected through that area, through the waterway, and then upstream, the T and the MTBA area there definitely does kind of create a blockage. But again, removing that dam would essentially increase connectivity for animals that can't fly. So in the interest of time, not that we don't want to hear anybody's questions, but we'd love to get some of this stuff kind of down on paper so that we can go back and think about it and review everything a little bit more closely. So with that being said, at this point, the potential uses of the site as outlined in kind of the preliminary agreement that we have with the town are potentially citing affordable housing, potentially coming up with a plan for a public park, or coming up with a plan for essentially a conservation area. What we'd like to do now is kind of just take anybody else's input on other uses that aren't listed here that you think might be of interest. And then we are going to kind of go around and give you guys all kind of a bargaining chip or a little sticky note to come up here and essentially rank or place emphasis on priorities that you all have. And then we're going to do a group activity to kind of flush out some of the ideas that you might have associated with those things. So with that being said, is there anything that anyone wants to add to this list?
Potential uses, yes.
I don't know if I should direct this to you, but at the town hall meeting where we voted not to develop this property, I'm a little surprised to see affordable housing, which is development, even on this agenda. Because there's no sidewalks, that it's a dangerous street now. It would be worse with more traffic. And I guess I assume that that's what we were voting to not do at town meeting. So I just want to say that.
Does anyone here have a response to that? Great, thank you for sharing, I appreciate that. Sure.
So relative to affordable housing, I don't think that the idea was ever to have like the entire place paved over, but to put like nestle some affordable housing in the corner.
That would be our understanding, especially because it is a delineated wetland upstream of the dam. Getting permission to do any type of development in that area would require permission from the Conservation Commission and all types of kind of permission through, you would be violating the Wetlands Protection Act, so that would take all types of,
The idea was like to have affordable housing in a barn-shaped place, much like the barn used to be there.
Not sure exactly about the architectural footprint, but the maximum number of units that if the affordable housing were to be placed or cited would be upwards of maximum of 12 units from our understanding from the town.
with a footprint of 5,000 square feet.
Yes. Yes.
Let me address the question of affordable housing a little bit. My name is Bernice Brown, and I'm here to speak for affordable housing. I'm a member of the Acton Housing Authority Board and also of the Acton Community Housing Corporation. Let me just say that developers are markedly, incredibly creative in building affordable housing. One example is the development on Sachem Way, which is now named for one of the members of our committee, Bob Whittlesey, so we call it Whittlesey Village. For years and years and years, there was a thought that absolutely nothing could be developed there, and lo and behold, we have units which are considered worthy of being put on a national register because they're so unusual. I want to stress that as soon as the question of affordable housing comes up, there are always abutters who have reservations and fears and anxieties about it. Again, I want to emphasize that number one, local residents are given priority whenever there is an affordable housing development. Number two, except for the elderly, and there is a huge need for elderly housing, the families that live in affordable housing, I would say 95% of them are working low-income families, so they're not people who are living on the dole, so to speak. They simply can't afford housing. I appeared, and I see someone here who also appeared a couple of weeks ago at a Board of Appeals meeting when the developer of a different situation actually reduced the size of the building. He eliminated the upper story because it was felt not to be consistent with what the neighbors felt would be compatible with other private housing in the neighborhood. Developers work with the local community, they work with the design review board, and they do everything in their power to make these developments as attractive as they can possibly be. I urge any of you to go and look at the development on Sachem Way. The rear is beautifully landscaped, and the houses are just incredibly attractive. So that's my pitch.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other ideas for potential uses that aren't up here? Yes.
I just wanted to, sorry. I'm a resident on River Street, and I just wanted to add one quick comment that it's not an issue of affordable housing or not on River Street. There are 2 Habitat for Humanity homes, one being refurbished now, one that's completed, and a 40B. So those are 3 separate affordable housing developments that exist already. So that's important to understand for context.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other potential uses for the site?
I just wanted to make that process comment that I think we're getting ahead of ourselves because those affordable housing is still up there as an item of discussion, and you're looking for what additional things other than what's already there.
Yes, we love your feedback. Wonderful, and we will all have the chance to vote on these, and we would love to get all of your opinions that way and, offer other feedback. Is there any other uses that aren't up here?
Yeah, I would add recreation, which I see as different from a public park. We had talked when we were looking at buying this property about access to the brook, fishing possibly. I know the state stocks Fort Pond Brook up by Jones Field with trout, and I see people in their waders in there all the time. Maybe a canoe landing, other kinds of recreation, a river walk, but other kinds of creative recreation that we could enjoy on this property.
Go ahead. Yes.
I know our town is looking at the location for the potential dog park. So this could be something we think about it. Thanks.
Anybody else? Yes.
Just real quickly, the conservation area like Pratt's Brook has trails for hiking, snowshoeing, and mountain biking. How is that different from the public park? I mean, would that still be true? What's the difference between a public park and a conservation area?
And a conservation area. So the public park would be more of a space that would be more passive recreation, an area potentially that the town could even rent out for events. We observe conservation to be something similar to maybe having a boardwalk through the wetland or exactly trails of some sort, a little fewer amenities, a little less footprint on the property. Yes.
I want to not add to your list, but because on your previous page, you had mentioned public parking, and I would like to have a vote to not put public parking on this list.
Yes, we're under the impression that that would occur if, for instance, there was the housing cited. There would obviously be parking for that, or Oh, of course not, no.
Yeah, we were thinking it parking more along the lines as if this were a public area, which inevitably it's going to be, if everybody isn't able to walk there or isn't able to bike there, we want to make sure that people are able to use it, so inevitably somebody will have to park. Tom?
So potentially an educational opportunity regarding the history of the site. Yeah, wonderful. Bill?
Yes, one of the things that I wanted to bring not only to our group but to the public is that the removal of the dam is going to change the entire ecology of the area. If you go a little bit further downstream, you'll go down by Vanderbilt Road. The brook goes underneath River Street. It does a little bit of a loop, a U, and goes back underneath again. If you look to the right, it's all overgrown with trees now, and that is the way our area is going to look in 50 years because they took that dam out around 1965.
Yes.
How many votes are we getting? Like, how many dots do we get?
That's it.
Well, the reason I ask is because I see like multiple things that can be done. Like maybe there should be like an all of the above, or some way to go to 3 or 4.
I see. It was really basing on anticipating how many people we'd have today. What do you think, 2?
Yeah, I think we'll stick with.
I think the idea is that we'll give everybody 2 votes, and then that way we'll be able to get a better idea of exactly where everybody's priorities lie. Obviously, we know that there are the ability to kind of stack a lot of these in this 7-acre property, and we're just trying to get a better gauge from you all which ones we're going to try and get on there and have be successful instead of kind of something that was brought up in the other meeting, a bunch of different uses that aren't excellent. So we're just trying to negotiate how much we can fit and have it be a really successfully engaging public place.
I just have a clarifying question. What would be the sort of least, like you're saying, footprint on the environment? A public park, recreation?
Sorry.
I guess those are the 2 things I'm confused about. Like how many are you gonna, does public park involve cutting down a lot of trees to make room for that? Or is recreation opportunities sort of more of an impact on the environment?
Certainly, and I think that comes down to the fact that because the western portion of the property, that 5 acres that is pretty much delineated as a wetland, is within the Wetlands Protection Act. Anything that really happens on the site is going to have to go through like a vetting period with the Conservation Commission. So anything that, any redevelopment per se that would be permitted to happen would be in the area that's already disturbed east or below the dam. So that 2 acres on the eastern side of the property there.
A question. So I've heard passive recreation, but there's also this move to have like more football fields and stuff. So I think, Peter, did you mean passive recreation on there? 'Cause it says recreation, so I didn't know how that works on.
Yeah. I don't know how you define passive recreation. It's not a soccer field, I don't think. I'm thinking fishing, maybe canoe landing. What other ideas people might have for recreation? It's up to the community what they want to put on there. Should there be a playground there? That's what we're here for tonight.
And we can specify as we move on to the next section really more in depth on what these mean to you. Did we have a question back there? Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to like the historical significance part of it, if we did like, for like the education, if we did like ecological education along with that too, so like kind of combine historical and ecological education people about wetlands and things like that.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes. It has been discussed by the committee recently of considering making River Street a one-way street. That was discussed in last committee meeting. At this point, we as the students are looking at this site as is currently existing. We may take that into account, that presenting a design opportunity if for some reason that were to be changed to be a one-way street.
Okay, let me.
Yes.
I want to get out as much information as we can. We met with Corey York, the head of the DPW, at our last meeting. It had been suggested, the concept of making it one-way from School Street to Chadwick Street. The traffic there in the morning, rushing to get to the train station, is very hazardous. So we're looking at that. Who knows whether that'll happen or not. I believe that's a selectman's decision. That has to do with the town's traffic rules, which is a selectman's decision, but we're not anywhere near that at this point. That'll be part of this whole mix. Can you widen the road? It's pretty much private property on one side, constrained by wetlands on the other. Maybe in front of Lazaro, you could eat into the Lazaro property or 53 River Street a little bit. But the town is also looking at putting sidewalks there. It's a priority for the sidewalk committee. They've had the street surveyed. Both sides were surveyed for sidewalks because they don't know which side they could put them on. Again, these are private properties along there, so if you were going to do it on the north side, you'd have to get easements from all the landowners, which is something we negotiate all the time to get sidewalks, but it's a very long process. So those are kind of things that are in the distant future, but are at least have been raised as possibilities.
Yes, Bill.
In going through this process, did you look at putting a building on there for affordable, low income, and where would it be?
We have looked into that. We haven't presented any designs as of yet, but we have taken a look at what the 5,000 square foot footprint would look like on the site and just kind of positioning it in different places. At this point, we have not entered the design stage yet. That will be next meeting, and we'll have a better sense if to show you where that might be best sited.
Would it be possible for us to have an additional vote for something we absolutely don't want to see there?
I'm sorry, sir.
Let's gather. I think our hope is that we're going to do this, we're going to do a vote poll about what's up here, and then we're actually going to do, sorry, I got this to everybody, is we're actually going to have you move to the front of the tables and get in groups and start to interact with the actual map. And there's markers and pens and base maps, and what we want to do is to get your feedback. So if there's something you absolutely don't want to see there, that's where you put it down, scribble it in, circle it a million times. But just because basically what we're going to do is we're going to take these maps back and we're going to look at them really carefully. And we're also going to have you guys, once you've kind of gotten your own ideas out, kind of sit in groups and start to look at different ways that you might want to use the site based on these priorities. And then we're going to go through and kind of chat about what each group came up with. And then on your way out, if there's something that didn't come up that you guys think is really, really paramount and really, really important, we're going to have a larger map here where you guys can write down anything that didn't get addressed this evening, anything that you didn't get to voice, and that way we'll have it written down and we'll be able to come back to you and start to, with our designs for the next meeting, have some of that all in consideration. It's a little like a negative vote. Well, hopefully with this voting mechanism here, we'll be able to see where everybody's priorities lie. Those of you who have stickers, if you want to run up there now and start to do that, and then go and choose a table and start.
And we'll start getting
everybody's feedback. If everybody's comfortable with that.
Clarify again what it is people are putting the sticker on. Are they saying, this is what I really want, and I'm going to put a sticker on that, this is what I really want, and I'm going to put a sticker on that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you guys don't have stickers, maybe just come towards me right here and I'll hand them out to you. Just to make it efficient.
So yes, we're prioritizing uses at this point. So if you have a sticker, please come up and place it on the board. All right, folks. We're gonna ask you to. We're gonna start with this table over here in the corner, and we're gonna just pass over the mic here, and maybe just any of you who want to share kind of what you discussed and your thoughts and opinions and kind of the general conversation that happened around this table, that would be great.
So we were of differing opinions one way or not. A lot of it depends on the traffic and needing more of a traffic study. Overall, we were in favor of conservation lands and highlighting historical aspects. And nobody at our table was in favor of affordable housing.
I mean, this just shows a little bit of a legend of where trails might go, maybe a kayak launch. Again, the same theme that was just mentioned, mostly about conservation area and historical, significance with some signage and so on. And you had a good idea about the building.
Yeah, so I was thinking if we could put just kind of a small building to, like next to the wetland part to show ecological significance and historical significance. And it could be, we were thinking like volunteer staff, because there are some areas around here that have that kind of thing going for it, but there was some drawback that maybe we wouldn't get enough volunteers, so just something like maybe on the weekends we have like a person in there to help guide people along the way with the education along those lines.
I think I saw a number of yes votes for sidewalks on River Street among our various papers.
Anybody else? Pass on to the next table.
Thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to looking at your notes. This table, does anyone want to start? Oh, boy. Awesome.
To be the sucker. So I think we also had a lot of interest in maintaining both a conservation and historical elements that are there. And a couple of the ideas that came up was kind of incorporating both, similar to what is at the Acton Arboretum, where there may be a more cultivated area in the paved, which would be more garden-like or walk-through, versus a more natural area for the wetlands. We're in favor of minimal amount of parking that would be disruptive to this area. Traffic is difficult. The ideas in perhaps of having either a kiosk or some sort of space for either talks or educational elements about the site and its heritage, similar to what's at the Neshoba Brook Conservation Area. Let's see what else. Riverwalk or some sort of walking trail is another major thought. And my own 2 cents is along River Street, the paving area is slowly crumbling towards the river right near the guardrail, and it's not a very stable aspect because many of the trees are losing soil for the erosion and are falling into the river. So if part of the thought process for rehabilitating it would be to either put in a walkway or to find a way to stabilize that steep area. Anybody in the group want to?
I guess I would say the historic significance of the site needs to be acknowledged or respected in some manner. This is literally where Acton started, and was South Acton with the dam and the further, not this dam, further upstream, the dam by Main Street, and the establishment of mills, and then the proliferation of dams and mills that were put in by various parties over the years. Some of those dams are gone, the mills are gone, but that's an important part of this town's history. That's where this town began, was South Acton. And then the train came in and really, the town took off.
I just wanted to add too, there was, in the discussion around this table, there was some concern about the dam and whether to take the dam out and whether, and what the effects of that would be, and that the need for a hydrologic study.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I guess I lived about a few homes down on the same side of the property, and so my house in the backyard just kind of goes right up to the river, and I know there's quite a few folks, my neighbors, and also just further downstream. So definitely very concerned. Obviously I'm very interested in the historical aspect, but more concerned about the functional aspect of the dam and trying to understand what function did it currently serve in holding back water and what the impact would be if it were removed in terms of what the water levels would be further downstream, especially in properties that are above the river.
Hi. To me, the most important thing about the site is that you can actually, in this portion, actually interact with the water, whereas, if you walk along River Street, you're essentially just looking at it. But over here, you have a chance to actually interact with the body of water, which is sort of a rare commodity in Acton, that you can actually get to water and sit by it. So for those of you who don't know, the 10 houses or so that were built down here, in the 95 master plan, there was supposed to be public access all along the brook. Never happened. It was supposed to be a public easement. It's been fenced off. It's all private. You can't get to it. So I'm all for a scheme that totally preserves the entire length of that waterfront there.
I guess I just want to add, I think we felt like we didn't want affordable housing or any housing, just to preserve the wildlife, the habitat.
Should we move on to this table? Were you at that table? Does anybody, who was over here discussing? I know there were quite a few of you. We have a lot of great notes over here. Does somebody want to kind of summarize what you guys came up with?
We were real scattered. I mean, the people were very cool. Over there. We were just walking by and we'd write down stuff.
Absolutely fine.
Well. Okay. Well, I can look at the comments. I know I wrote a comment in the corner. Reduce paved areas to minimum. We don't have children playing area nearby. And somebody wrote, how about housing not so affordable? I don't understand that. Additional walkway along River Street, east side recreational, west part of paved area, historical significance, education site. Somebody else, I am very concerned about water levels downstream as the dam is removed and flooding at housing properties that abut the stream. Walkway along brook area enhanced by riparian vegetation for wildlife habitat, benches or other structure to sit and enjoy the brook. Some affordable housing. Okay, on corner of parcel. Any housing equals more traffic on a very narrow street with children and no sidewalks. And then this is my messy comment. Combine public park with conservation, historic, ecological education. See Tom Chidman's plan for walking paths, historical displays, etc. I think that also included preserving some of the dam and explaining how the raceway and all that sort of thing worked. And I am a real supporter of affordable housing, but I really don't think it's a good site for any kind of housing, even single family. That's the summary from this sheet. I can't presume to speak for the group because I don't even know, aside from Emily, and we were really kind of, fly-by-night group, so.
Absolutely, thank you. Anybody else add anything from this group? No? Was anybody at this table over here? Not really.
Does anybody have any final comments that they want to make?
So there's no way to connect this site with both rooms, or like is there connection we made to the right there, or are there any connections possible because of the layout?
Yeah, connectivity is something that we're looking at. Yes, sorry, Bettina, my bad. Connectivity is one of the analyses that we're currently working on. We're looking at both wildlife connectivity as well as human connectivity. We've looked at kind of like the complete streets plan that the town has in effect, as well as looking at some of the bike paths that are being constructed in other places around town and the feasibility of whether or not those things can connect to this area. Obviously, it's in a highly residential area, and to have a successful park, we want people to be there. So being able to make sure that everyone can get there safely is really important, and that's one of the things that we're kind of really excited about, that the conversation's kind of already been started about how to make traveling on River Street safer for anybody. So next time we're back here, we'll have something a little bit more complete for you, but know that that's definitely something that we're working on.
Yeah, I would just add the connection to Pratt's Brook is conservation is probably not going to happen, because the T owns, I think the property goes about halfway up the steep slope, but then you got to get across the tracks to get to, the T's not going to allow that to happen, so.
Okay, thanks. Our team really has not wrestled with much of anything that's down there yet. We were recently formed. We've taken a look at it, but we really haven't even sat down to think about the possibilities of this property. One of the things that I have been thinking about is the building that Sigourney Corporation built. There was a machine shop, and they were back in the late 1950s, early 1960s. It's a cinder block building. I don't really know whether it is salvageable or not, but I would like to see if there's any use for the building before we destroy it. Because if we go to put something back there in the future, it's going to be a lot of permitting, and we may not be able to do anything with the site. But I don't know if any of you have any thoughts, but please get it to our group and see if it's something that's worth salvaging as a educational area or something like that. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just make a few more comments before I guess we turn it back over to Amanda and Eliza to wrap this up. We meet on, I believe it's the first and third Wednesdays. Is that the days we decided each month? If you don't know, if you go on the town's website and you want to be notified about meetings of any committee in town, you can sign up and you'll automatically get a notice every time an agenda goes out about where the meeting is and what committee and the agenda. We've been meeting at the Rec Center on Audubon Hill. Again, this is, I think, our fourth meeting maybe, so we've just started. We have no preconceived notions really about what's going to happen here. That's for the community to decide. In terms of studies, you talk about, we've got a lot of studies we've got to do. You talk about South Acton being the original birthplace of Acton. Well, 2,000 years ago, I would bet there were Native Americans that were living along Fort Brook Pond. So an archaeological study probably be one of the first things we would start with. We need to do a hydrological study about the dam. We need to study the dam, about whether we can rebuild it or it has to come down. Traffic studies. How are we going to pay for that? We've got to make all those decisions as we go along. So the next meeting of this committee will be on May 30th. I'm not sure where it's going to be located. I certainly appreciate that we all appreciate the turnout tonight and the interest that is in this site. That's great. The reason we're going to be on the 30th, which is the last Wednesday of the month instead of the 3rd, is because Amanda and Eliza are making their presentation to their committee on the 25th. They have, as part of their scope of services, to do 2 community meetings, and they're going to wrap this up in June. So as I understand it, your second community meeting is going to be on the 30th. Is that the latest word? So hopefully we can meet in this room again and invite you all back and stay involved and get us your ideas because we'll be trying to figure out what the best plan to put together for this is over the next year and a half probably.
Yeah. Final sort of proposal going to be presented at town meeting? Is that how it works?
Yes, it will have to be. I'm sure there'll be some money that will be involved. So town meeting will have to appropriate. However we decide we're going to be able to fund whatever we come up with, town meeting will have to decide, and, you know, if you've been through the Morrison Farm process, it may be 10 years from now before we decide what to do with this property.
Okay, so I just want to say thank you again for all of you coming out. We're overwhelmed with the engagement in this community, having worked with other communities over the year. This is really astounding, and we really appreciate you being here and giving your feedback. If there's anything that you guys don't feel like was heard tonight, again, don't hesitate to jot something down, make a note on any of these sheets as you head out, or just come chat with us. Like Peter said, we'll be here again on May 30th, and at that point, we will have completed all of our formal analysis. We'll be able to present all of that to you with some harder numbers and figures, and you know, kind of a little bit more concrete ideas about, you know, what's going on in the surrounding area, talking about connectivity and stuff like that. But we'll also present 3 different design alternatives, and those will be based on kind of where you guys ranked your priorities this evening, as well as, you know, considering some things that, you know, maybe we discover in further analysis. And then we'll obviously take feedback after that meeting before we compile our final design, our final vision that you guys will have moving forward conceptually for this. What else did I have to say? Was that it? Oh, for anybody who wasn't here this evening, we're going to be putting together a survey that we'll share with the committee, and hopefully we can get in a public place so that any of your friends, community members will have the opportunity to, using our URL, go online and give feedback. And if you guys feel compelled to do that in another forum, we'd obviously love to hear from you. So again, thank you, and we're really excited to be working with you all on this project.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, please, all in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Any opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.